Welcome. So welcome. This morning I am delighted to be joined by Wendy Sullivan and Paul Field, who are giving a joint presentation at the NLP International Conference next year. So thank you both for joining me this morning. Your presentation next year sounds very, very interesting. Do you know what you want? Connecting to the body's wisdom. And I'm thinking, oh yes, that sounds fun. So please do tell me a bit more about yourselves and your presentation.
Well, we don't know what we want in terms of who's answering first.
No, clearly.
That's the first thing, right? we generally do conference presentations about things that we're really bad at so that we can learn how to do them. I think that's what happened last year.
It's to teach what you most need to learn.
Yeah. Then I'll start as I'm talking. So yes, I'm Paul. I do a number of things from corporate coaching, co-train with Wendy on with a lot of clean language, which we both do. I've been doing clean language for I've forgotten how many years now, quite a long time. And I do one-to-one stuff, which over the last few years I've been more specialising in working with women who are recovering from sort of sexual assault and emotional abuse. It's basically because I had a client who'd had that and I discovered it was really meaningful. And actually that's what led into me doing a lot of work with embodiment, because I realised people were coming to me who come from a lot of psychotherapy for years and there was still this kind of stuck stuff. And it seemed to be very in the body. Actually what we're talking about comes from kind of primarily my explorations over the last few years into how you work with the body, how you had it into coaching approaches, so things like NLP and clean. And and we'll say more about that in a moment. But let Wendy say a bit more about who she is.
Yeah, so I'm an NLP trainer and do a lot of clean language training. I also coach and an accredited psychotherapist. So NLP and clean language go through everything I do, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So do take it in turns or decide who's going to tell me more about your presentation, because as you said, it's about embodiment, which sounds fascinating.
So we're setting out to address a range of problems. The first of those is that what we think we want isn't necessarily what our bodies want.
Right.
And if one invites someone to notice outcomes that come from their body, you quite often get very different answers from if you just go with kind of cognitive version.
Yeah.
People very regularly try to solve issues with their mind and by talking conceptually that would be better addressed using the body. And people are very often just not aware of all the resources that their bodies hold and that can be put to great use.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it sounds fascinating. Paul, you were going to add something?
Yeah, I think that the other thing, and I particularly noticed because studying the work you do a lot yourself, it's like how much you're tolerating things in life. So you go through with all this kind of quite mindy attitude. You start noticing your body what you want. You realize how much you override that. So you go, actually, it might be nice to, simple things like maybe it's a bit cold in the room. I should put my jumper on. You go, oh no, I can't be bothered. But there's a whole range. You start noticing how much you don't actually do what your body would like, and actually end up tolerating life as opposed to just enjoying life. So a lot of I mean, what we wanted to do in the presentation was do some really practical things. So to sort of introduce this as problems if people recognize them, and then give people some practical tools they can use for themselves and with clients. And this is about partly connecting your body. So when we say connecting to the body, there's lots of things you can do with body, because you can do movement and touch work and things like that. For this session, we're primarily looking at sensing inside, like your felt sense, although we might do a little bit of movement. And so it's almost a process of, can you notice inside first of all? Because if you can't do that, you can't find out what your body wants.
Yeah.
So once you can notice inside, can you actually start to find out? Can you start to find out outcomes for your body? And then we're going to see how much time we've got in the session, because we're still putting a few of the bits together. But there's the piece about, well, then what do you do instead?
Yes.
What do you do instead of just going for the outcome and putting the jumper on, or giving yourself a hug or something? It turns out there's a colossally creative number of ways that people, in fact, ignore these things. So we'll hopefully do a little bit of that as well. But the idea is to come up with some practical processes that definitely help connect into your felt sense, into the resources that are there, and come out with like almost a spoken outcome, which you can then either work more with the body or work with your normal coaching techniques.
And I'm guessing it's you use the example of putting a jumper on, but it's also it's the consequences of not doing that, isn't it? Because I'm thinking, as you were saying that, I was thinking, one of the things that I sometimes ignore is, oh, I'm hungry. And I start off with, oh, I'm hungry, can't be bothered, just want to finish this. And then suddenly I've got to the stage where actually I can't focus on anything because I'm so damn hungry now. So it's consequences, isn't it, of ignoring those things.
And it's actually because we're talking, in a way, these seem really mundane, like the putting the hungry or the jumper bits kind of adds up. And then you start realizing, well, actually, I'm overriding these things. So it turns out, well, actually, I don't ask for what I want in my relationships. And then it turns out actually my entire relationship or stream of relationships is not what I want in life. I don't do that with my work. So then I'm tolerating my work. It just builds up and builds up.
Yes.
So, but it also means you can make, simple changes by just like day to day starting to notice what you your body would like, and whether what you do in response to that.
It sounds amazing. I'm really looking forward to this already. I mean, you've already sort of alluded to what delegates will take away from the session in terms of some practical resources. Is there anything else you can sort of add to that without giving too much away?
Certainly, our focus is pretty much invariably on practical stuff that people can apply and quickly. So they're not going to need to go away and do 10 years of reading about the subject before they can apply the stuff. But I think it's also pretty characteristic of what we do that what we'll cover will give the delegates themselves who are coaching and whatnot, will give them skills to use with their clients.
Brilliant.
But will also give them skills to use for themselves. So that it's sort of win-win in my opinion. I was
going to say, it's a whole plethora of resources that people can take away with them, which is wonderful. Thank you. So is there anything that delegates can do beforehand that will give them a deeper experience of your session?
Well, we think there's a couple of things. So other than, this one is not essential, but we do things with clean language. So if anyone wanted to do just a little quick reading around clean language and the questions, that just might make it a little bit more familiar. But we're going to introduce all that in the session. I think for the topic, we're going to suggest, if someone wanted to do it, almost a regular practice, you might just set a little alarm on your watch to remind you to do this every so often, just to pause just for a moment and check in with what their body wants in that moment.
Okay. And when you say regular, are we talking how regular? Once a day? Once an hour?
I'm
thinking that's a really good idea. I'll do it.
This is pre-work for a conference session, so it depends how eager someone is. You could do it once a day, or you could set it, do one day and set it every hour and just see what you discover on that day.
I think it's a matter of making it sustainable. So, much better to do it once a day, but do it over, from now till the conference, than to set oneself the target of doing it every hour. And, just find
So the every hour would be like, you say, today I'm going to try the experiment, and you do it every hour for that day, and then you find out what you find out, because that's also sustainable. And it depends what, you like to do. And there's a little follow-up. If you do that, then you could reflect on, well, how many times did you actually then do something about that?
Right.
And if you didn't, what did you do instead?
Yeah.
And that's getting to this sense of, are you kind of just discarding this? Or did you notice the information in the first place? Well, this will help you. But do you kind of somehow not trust it, or decide it's not important, or
devalue it?
In some way, so you can't say about it. So you just find out a little bit of your patterns around it.
That's really great. I will start doing that, and I think it's great that you have, you've explained that it's about something that's sustainable and also something that's reasonable, because it's just actually about raising awareness.
That's exactly it.
Oh, I'll certainly do that. Thank you. Well, and so will everybody else, I hope. So this year's conference, next year's conference, like this year's conference, is virtual. So how are you planning on? And I know you've presented at the conference before, both the in-person one in a hotel and the in-person one in a virtual environment. So how are you planning on adding it value within the virtual environment next year?
I was quite laughing because I knew this question was going to come up. I did a bodywork course last year, which I signed up for before lockdown.
Yeah.
And then we started doing it over lockdown. And so one of the things was, how do you do it? And some of it was touch-based work. So it's like, how do we convert all this so that we can do it over Zoom?
Yeah.
So it's actually really intriguing how much actually you can do. Obviously, there's lots of different kinds of work with the body, but most of it you can actually do over Zoom, and it can work really well. So I think I don't know how much we'll say explicitly in the session, but anyone who's interested in that kind of topic, we've got Q&A and they can ask us afterwards.
Yes.
So that's interesting. Then I think because of that, I don't think our session over Zoom, I think it'd work as well as in person. It's really, we can have people working with each other because Zoom's got the breakout rooms. Using the questions people get, and we're doing interoceptive awareness.
Yeah.
So people can very much sense into themselves.
Yeah.
It's all really possible, and huge amounts can happen over Zoom. So.
And I would imagine for some people that may be a bit more self-conscious or something like that, actually doing that sort of thing within the safety of the screen actually makes it easier for some people to feel confident about sensing into themselves without being quite so vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly like working with clients, which is similar. I mean, I found just well, first of all, you can meet over Zoom, which is it feels safer. You're more in control as a client. You're in your own environment, and there's lots of options. You can turn cameras off. You can sit further away from the camera. Yeah. And similarly, if we run, I mean, we're not doing too much. Like, you don't have to dance around or anything. Yeah. So there's movements possible if people want to. But yeah, there absolutely is options to turn cameras off if people want to.
Beautiful.
But really good. In fact, we had thought of that benefit that people would be more in control, feel safe, etc. Yeah. And thought, maybe we wouldn't say that to you, because it starts to sound as though we're going to do stuff where people are going to feel deeply unsafe or something. Yeah. And we definitely are not. We are definitely aiming at the pleasurable side of things. Yeah. Not delving into big problem-y things, although this work is, well, possibly absolutely essential, for people who've experienced trauma and so on. Working with the body seems to be always involved, and doing loads and loads of more cognitive-based stuff may be very helpful, but very often doesn't resolve things. But we are not going there. We are working with, getting to enjoy life, not tolerate life. And the activities we're doing, well, people can turn cameras off. The chances that they're going to feel that that's needed are very
unlikely.
Slim.
Yes.
So for us,
I'm thinking, and I'm thinking that it's just sometimes, the more introverted amongst us, that's it. They don't necessarily experience things in the same way in the room, whether it's something actually, fairly straightforward. or more in-depth stuff. So it's good to know that we're not going deep and that side of things. And I think it's lovely to know that, you know, there's going to be plenty of pleasure involved. That's great.
Yeah.
And actually, on that, this is an interesting one about biasing towards pleasure. One of the exercises we're going to do, we were trialing, and what we noticed is there was a noticing into your body, and the bias towards the aches and the pains and the stiffness is huge. So I'm still tweaking things, but we're tweaking it towards notice what you like. And there's a lot of exercises I've learned and I do with clients, which are actually, if you go to focus on something you like. Actually, I had a client who didn't like the word pleasure, so this is why I talk about what you like.
Oh, wow.
She's like, I don't know, pleasure. I don't know what it is. Okay, let's just find something you like. And she cottoned on that was the path in. But you start noticing something you like, and the number of things that come up about, am I allowed this? Is it okay to have it?
Mission,
yeah. So actually, it's really, like, it sounds like, oh, this is kind of quite light, and we can do things we like. But actually, the route into things that are really affecting you in life is can be quite profound.
Yes. I mean, I remember learning, fairly near the beginning of practitioner course, was the whole thing about, focusing on the positives, and you wouldn't go to the supermarket with a list of what you don't want. You go to the supermarket with a list of what you do want, and it's that stuck with me for years and years and years about, that we do know how to do that because we write it on our shopping list every week. But you're right, there is still that tendency. So, well, I don't want this and I don't want that. And I think especially if it's body, it tends to be, well, it's almost like those bits that shout loudest, I'm assuming.
That's right. Yeah.
Want the attention. Yeah, brilliant. I'm looking forward to this. So as I said, you've both spoken at the conference before. So what does the NLP International Conference mean to you?
Well, I had to look back. I think this year is my 10th anniversary of coming to the conference. I definitely went 10 years ago. That's the earliest date I could find in my diary. And what I was going to say is, so it made me think about the first time I came to the conference, and I just remember it was earlier in my coaching career, and I was just going from session to session, and this is amazing. I didn't know this. Oh my goodness. It was like mind blowing, particularly that first one. So being able to present now, and as you said, we've done a few years. It's like a bit like coming full circle. It's just so lovely to be, again, going to amazing sessions, but actually we're bringing our own kind of learnings and explorations back to people who I hope are having similar experience to what I did the first time. It's amazing.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. Wendy, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I mean, what comes to mind as to what the conference means to me is it's really important in my life. It's been the start. I suppose I could say it's life-changing, really. It was at an NLP conference. I've been talking at the conference for about 20 years, and so I've probably been coming to it for about 25. I've even rearranged holidays to not miss it. And somewhere in the early years, I had this big revelation in the middle of a tea break there that I could become an NLP trainer. It really was a revelation. And so I got on and I did that, which obviously made a big difference in my life. And it was at the NLP conference that I experienced clean language for the first time. Wow. And I left that conference just completely focused on doing all that clean language training I could get as fast as I could get it. And, it's been a key thing, big part of my life ever since.
Absolutely.
So, as well as obviously excellent CPD, it's just always stuff that's memorable, and meeting up with old friends and coming across interesting new people, really important. I've also done lots of presentations with someone else,
Yes.
I've talked with a variety of people, though of course Paul's my favorite over the years.
For the time being, yeah.
And when you were presenting with the others, they were your favorite too.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, really important in my life.
Yeah. Oh,
Thank
that's
you for
lovely.
keeping on running it. I was so thankful when you stepped in to take it over.
Oh, well, you're welcome. It was kind of it's a now or never, isn't it? And it's one of those moments. So as you say, those pivotal moments. That was one of our pivotal moments, happened at the conference as well. We went to the conference as an exhibitor, and we came out with a conference. That wasn't quite what we expected.
Wow. I hadn't realized it had been
we
kind
had,
of all at the conference.
No, we had 2 hours to decide whether or not this was going to be the last conference, or we were going to take it on and run with it. So
Wow.
so it's one of those, maybe we felt into our bodies, I'm not quite sure. We probably felt into an awful lot of things in a very short space of time, but yeah, it was just one of those intuitive things that it was one of those rare occasions for me when I did know what I wanted. So
well, it's a very big community of people who are very grateful for that.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So just to remind everybody, Wendy and Paul are presenting at the conference next year. You're presenting on Saturday, the 21st of May, and you're presenting at 15:30, which will be BST by then, British summertime, thank goodness.
Yeah.
And we have 3 hours of an opportunity to deep dive into everything that you're going to share with us. I just mentioned that's 3 hours with a 30-minute break in between. So there will be, and it sounds like there's going to be opportunities to move around anyway. So thank you both for being so willing to present at the conference next year, and thank you for taking time with us today. It's been really lovely to find out a bit more about what your presentation's all about.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, thanks, Karen.
Great
Lovely to talk
opportunity.
to you.